And boom,
And we should be live.
we are live real quick. All right. I am just checking one thing, guys. This is awesome. This is our first live broadcast, our first guest episode. We couldn't be more stoked. This is kind of a trial and error thing, but we're stoked to bring it to you. And oh my gosh, I just saw it. So I'm about to share it to you guys. If you're on my personal Facebook page or Micah's personal Facebook page,
Let's
go ahead and hit
go.
that share button right
This
now.
is awesome.
We are live in real time. You're watching me do this in real time. We are live. Tune in and boom, go time. So this episode, guys, is brought to you by Medusa Beard Oil Company. Medusa Beard Oil is not your father's beard oil. It is a beard oil of the gods. They have a Greek line out, it is me and Micah's favorite stuff right now. My personal favorite is the Hercules brand, but they are building up something special, guys. So if you want to check out and get in early with these guys, tell them the Guilty Party sent you. Go to www.facebook.com/Medusa Beard Oil CO. One more time. That is www.facebook.com/Medusa Beard Oil CO. And without further ado, we get into episode. What are we on now, Micah?
We are number 5.
I think it's like 5 now, man.
Oh, no, wait. 4. We're on number 4.
It's number 4.
We're moving really fast though, because I mean, think about it from last year. Yeah, from last year, I think we were number 4 after like 3 or 4 months. So we're getting the song pretty quick.
Well, we had to get our feet wet, man. We were in the beginning. Me and you were just like, I don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna do it, and we figured it out along the way. And look at us now, bro. We're like, you can see our faces. No, we're doing the dang thing. But yeah. So guys, we have something special for you tonight. Personal friend of the podcast. His name is Jonathan Lee. He's writing in the book right now, an incredible book. The name is The Death of the Human Experience. I believe this message is so incredibly important for the world to hear. Not only as a society have we become super distant from each other, but social media interactions are at an all-time low and at an all-time high of volume. And what I mean by an all-time low is at all-time low of the energy it is putting into this world. You have comments being said, you have cyberbullying out there, you have so much incredible things, and it's really hurting the interjection of the human experience. And we have a guy that is writing a book right now. It's an incredible book. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jonathan Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. Where is he? He's coming on. Give him a second. He'll be on. Uh-oh. Did we get kicked? And guys, this is awesome. This is our first live broadcast. Am I still on? I am still on right now. This is incredible. Hold on. I need to get off the studio.
Well, it's the two of us. I guess we're waiting for Pat to get back on.
Nice.
Texas is still trying to catch up from that stupid ice storm.
Oh, yeah.
I've been having a couple of my buddies, they were having power issues again still, like yesterday. I'm like, isn't everything back up?
Yeah.
Texas for you.
I figured something like that happened. I mean, it was funny that right as soon as you guys introduced me, I was like, wait a second, what's going on here? I'm not popping in. And then you just disappeared.
Well, that's a hell of a way to start a podcast, but
so funny. Yeah. Hey, that just means good things are about to happen.
That's what we do, man. All right, I think that is Pat.
We
got Pat back.
Oh my gosh, what happened, dude? Did we lose power? Are we still?
It says end broadcast, so I assume so. I'm gonna go look.
I think we're still going, dude. Let's keep it
rolling.
It's
still live.
All right, perfect. So we didn't have
6 minutes and 9 seconds in.
Well, apologies from my end. I think Texas is still catching up with the power issues.
Bro, it's okay. I knew something was going to go wrong. And in the middle of that introduction, I was like, this is going too smooth right now. Like, why? Like, this is not right. But okay. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where we left off, but I wanted to introduce this man right here to your top right corner. If you're watching in full broadcast mode, his name is Jonathan Lee, personal friend of mine for years. Me and him, actually, little known fact, used to play in a band together at one point in our lives. And he is on to something huge right now. Welcome him proudly and warmly to the show, Jonathan Lee, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, guys. Yes. It's great to be here, man.
Dude, man. So you are writing an incredible book, man. What led you? My first question for you is what led you to write The Death of the Human Experience?
To be completely honest, I was working at a school, doing some safety, security, and some counseling for some of the middle school kids. And I just started picking up a lot of patterns and information, things that, kids of my own children's age, that I was experiencing from a different perspective, being inside of the school and then being a parent at home with my kids at home, that really started clicking to me that were alarming and just extremely impactful to me as a parent. So I started asking questions and looking into this stuff, and the school actually had to make cuts and dropped me before the next school year when I was actually planning a program to enlighten parents, children, and educators alike about what I was uncovering. And I, at that point, didn't know what the hell to do with my life and didn't know what direction I was going in, but I had nothing because I just lost my job and I was getting married in 6 weeks. And about 2 weeks after I lost my job, I looked at my wife and it just was like a bomb dropped on me, like an epiphany. I'm supposed to write a book. I'm supposed to put all this information that I have and start talking to families everywhere about it, not just the school. That's why, God took this out of my life. That's why I have, this position gone and I can deliver this information to a broader spectrum of people.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
So you saw detrimental effects to kids at an earlier molding stage that really put something on your heart, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, and so you being a father, and congratulations, my friend, you have a new one on the way.
Thank you, sir.
Hey,
thank you.
Congrats. I just had mine 3 months ago.
He sure did.
Yeah. Not far behind you. Oh man.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy having a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and then starting over in 6 months,
Goodness.
It's nuts to think about, but we're excited,
Something's happening here. Something's happening.
People chatting. Telling me my shirt's ugly. Did Patty freeze?
Oh, come on.
Hey.
Anyways,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess he's still stuck for right now. Until that happens, right. Just go and continue since we've got you live. Just kind of continue where you left off.
Yeah, I mean, as Patrick was mentioning, the things I started recognizing at the school were just, kids were acting out in ways that were outside of their character or outside of their moral compass. And it really just didn't add up to the the spirit of the child that I knew, that I was, oh, there we go. Patty's back.
There we are.
So yeah, it didn't add up to the spirit of the children that I was getting to know. These kids were doing things that were outside of their character and their moral compass. And, you know, I'd start getting them to change some pretty poor behaviors by the end of a couple of weeks. And then a weekend with their parents, they'd come back and start developing the same poor behaviors again. I'm like, wait a second, I thought we fixed this last week, you know? And started asking a lot of questions as to what their family environments look like after a few months of recognizing that the only time that they were getting worse is when they were going home. And so, you know, being at school, being involved with somebody who cared, who was connecting with them, who was investing in them, who was having conversations and asking them questions that probably their parents should have been asking them, but they had never been asked before. And it really just clicked like, holy crap, you know, what is family life like for these kids nowadays? You know, I'm raising my kids in the best way that I know possible. So we talk about a lot of things. We talk about a lot of issues. We're very upfront and honest and open and vulnerable with our kids about things. You know, we live in a state where pot's legal. So it's a conversation we've already had with them at 14 and 11. So, you know, that's the type of stuff that comes up in our household. And I just was experiencing kids that were disconnected from their parents, and the detriment that can cause to a child's development, psychologically, mentally, and emotionally, it's just really alarming. And we have a society of parents that are overworked in America, that are either so attached to their job and their work hours and either the title or the, you know, the stack of money it's bringing in or the material things that they can buy with it, or even just addicted to a screen, as many people are these days, you know, where the attention's off of the child and it's on everything else. And so children aren't getting the psychological attachment that's important for their brains to develop healthy amounts of gray matter and for them to have a very stable and you know, safe place to develop the frontal lobe of their brain, where a lot of our human skills are housed. So when I started uncovering a lot of that research that was being done on the effects of, you know, psychological detachment or psychological neglect, which it actually is, you know, we know that abuse is detrimental to the gray matter in the frontal lobe. Well, shoot, if we're feeding kids psychological neglect, isn't that going to also damage the gray matter in the frontal lobe during the developing stages, the most crucial stages of our human brain development? So that's kind of where I started.
Well, yeah,
that
and
was
with the vast amounts of yeah. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, you're a little choppy, but there you are.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my connection. My wife's probably streaming something right now.
Probably watching the new episode of
if this gets through, would you say like a vast majority of the problems nowadays are due to the amount of screen time that the youth in general have?
I think it has a lot to do with that, but I truly do believe that if we had more interactive parents, if we had parents that weren't overworked and that had the time to go home and invest in their kids and not be exhausted or stressed out because they've got deadlines that they need to hit, or this, you know, this document that needs to be done by Friday so that this company can make billions of dollars and they don't even get a bonus out of it. It's like, if we didn't have this society that's running a rat race that's, you know, impossible to get out of, then I believe that we would have parents there to set healthy boundaries with screen time, to set healthy boundaries around, you know, different things, actions that kids take that can turn into really poor actions when they're out in the real world. So I just think that we're almost in a parentless society to an extent, and that we also, you know, and it's not even the parents' faults. They don't even know that they're involved in this, you know, detrimental behavior.
Let me ask you this. I mean, from like a lot of our parents, that generation was, you know, they were overworked, they were working all the time, you know, they weren't always there. You know, if they were lucky, you know, the mom was working, you know, at home, you know, whatever it was, or they were both working. And so do you think that's a cultural change where now It's even though everything's been modernized, technology's come so far, with screen time and all that kind of stuff, that we haven't really seen a good emphasis of going back to the parent child relationship that maybe we saw like way back in the day before. I don't know, maybe in the 1920s, before the hardworking environment became a huge part of our American culture.
Yeah, I 100%. Yeah, I do believe it's just become cultural. And so that's what I talk about a lot in the book. It's American culture at this point. And so how do we shift American culture to impact the development of our children? Because if you raise healthy children, you've got healthy adults and healthy citizens who turn into healthy politicians who write healthy policies and run a healthy country. And you don't have this this need to be better or bigger than every single person all day long in order to just survive and get by. Because the American dream is, hey, you put in these hours, you put in this time, you put in this work, you're going to get this big house and this big truck and this big boat and these big vacations. But the truth is, how many people truly get that lifestyle out of all the time and energy they put in? It's very minimal, the return on your investment.
Do you think we live too much in the pursuit of, 20 years, 25, 30 years down the line? Because that's what the American dream is supposed to. You work hard, you do all this stuff so you can retire, you can live in a big house, drive a nice car, that kind of stuff. Do you think we live too much in that type of era versus living in the now? Like from a father, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this as well. As a father, to me, growing up and experiencing my own relationship with my parents and seeing everyone else's, when I had kids, I decided I'm going to live a little more in the minute, in the now, because you're not going to get those memories back. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We'll be willing to take those vacations now instead of having to wait, because we don't have any kids anymore in the house.
Right. No, I definitely think, that we do live too much in that. We're so focused on things that aren't right in front of us. Right. Like you said, I think there's balance, though. There has to be some sort of focus on the future in order to maintain stability, safety, a safety net, and you can't predict everything. You're going to get knocked on your ass sometimes by life. It's life, man. But I think the more prepared you are, and the better connected and truly intertwined with your family, understanding of who your family is and what their abilities are, then you can survive a lot of things a lot better. So I think, when we're so focused on the future so far out, we lose sight of what's right in front of us, and we can see some pretty small decisions that could really affect us heavily as unimportant, and those were the most important decisions in our life.
So an interesting thought I have is, do you think any of this like matriculates to not just the youth, but the older generation too? So people around our age, in our 30s, or Micah in his 20s, right? Now, say these people are, which you have a lot more these days, like going live on Twitch, gamers for a living, people that are putting in 10 to 12 hours a day on games, and they're still working their jobs, but they're still committing that. And that is still essentially screen time, 10 to 12 hours in front of a game. Right. And now I've noticed in my personal life, I used to be one of those. I used to game a lot back in the day, and I'd probably put 8 to 9 hours easily into a game where life would just vanish by. And if anybody tried to take that controller out of my hand, if anybody even walked in front of that screen while I was playing Madden or Assassin's Creed or something, right, and I would get offended. I would be like, and do you think, and so my thing is like, think about a child, right? And you're giving him his screen time, right? How many children have you seen that screen gets yanked and they're like, okay, you need to go in timeout because you weren't listening to me. You were just on that screen, and those kids just freak out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was me. That was, I mean, literally, I'm in my 20s. I'm a grown ass man, and somebody walks in front of my thing and I throw a fit, and it's kind of that same thing, because we're getting such a dopamine level exchange. Right. So
absolutely.
Any thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, what's happening is we're growing addicts day by day. I mean, screen time's releasing more dopamine than even heroin in our brains. And so, but you don't see parents putting heroin in the hands of their children, yet they're putting a iPad or a telephone in a 3-month-old's hands to keep them occupied. It's crazy. Like there's, and now there's some studies that say that that, the release of, I guess, dopamine the first time that you take heroin is going to be obviously a lot more, but the way that it's engaging our brains and releasing these levels of dopamine consistently as we're attached to it is actually affecting us in the same ways that heroin can as an addict. It's developing the same gray matter atrophy that addicts can, develop from heroin addiction as well.
But I mean, like it's such a caveat, right? Because a kid's like throwing a fit, you can't get them to listen because they're just doing a thing. So you give them a screen, and all of a sudden they pipe down. So now that becomes mom and dad's antidote to control. Right?
Yeah, it's easy, man. Yeah. We've made life easy. We don't have to get up off our butts to cook anymore. We can order food from the couch. We just press a button. We just, we can order a girl that we want to go on a date with, in the
swipe
color of her hair and the color of her eyes. Yeah. And say yes or no. And at our fingertips, it's crazy. We've created a world where we don't have to actually engage empathy or critical thinking or conflict resolution or communication and relationship skills anymore, because those are truly best encompassed in a personal interaction. So kind of circling back to a question you asked earlier about it affecting even adults.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I see it affect even me if I have too much screen time. I almost have this anxious feeling grow inside of me if somebody does, like you say, want to come up and get in front of the TV or turn it off. And it's like, I'm watching a freaking basketball game.
Right.
I can pause it. Yeah. I have the ability to pause that game. But
there's a
for
certain
some reason,
type of chemical you're receiving from something you're so heavily entertained to. But if you literally took that screen off, right, you're just looking at the wall,
Yeah.
And it's like you're just looking at this black box where, like if you took the picture out. And so, I mean, that's a reality check right there.
We're in a world of convenience, and I think that we have used screen time of any style, any type. I think once you get behind that screen, you subconsciously, I don't know if it's a chemical thing or whatever it is, but you like to hide behind that. And the minute someone comes in front of your TV, they take away your phone, your tablet, you instantly come back to a reality of like, hey, this is the real world. So when you escape into that, someone blocks that, you feel triggered, you feel threatened. And I feel like that's the kind of culture we live in because we're so used to convenience.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say real quick, like with all of that happening and everything that we just discussed up to this point, can there be an argument made that we're literally making and creating introverts?
I think we're creating and breeding addicts and narcissists, and mental health patients.
Elaborate on the narcissism. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're so focused on ourselves all the time, and we paint pictures of ourselves in our lives all the time and live behind those pictures and choose to live, as you said, Micah, comfortably behind these pictures that aren't us all the time. And if somebody gets to see our real self, oftentimes there's an emotional outburst or some sort of anxiety or insecurity that comes up. When in reality, that's what we were meant to do. We were meant to be in fellowship and in communion and in community with one another. And that's where humans were meant to grow and to really understand ourselves. But because everything's so convenient, we're not even tapping into the real human experience anymore. And I think that's kind of where I saw these kids really having these outbursts. They didn't know how to express themselves. They're children. They're developing. They don't have the words or the communication skills, like adults. But and so it's natural to just physically react. I mean, the first thing that a child does when it's born to say, I need connection, is kick and scream, and let its mothers know, I want somebody to hold me, and I'm also hungry. So
I want to hint on that right there. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no, that's fine.
I have in my notes from your book exactly what you're hinting on right there. So I wanted you to speak about, in your book, you talk about Emperor Frederick II and the experiments that he did on the infant humans and what they ended up dying on. If you could please elaborate to the viewers on that.
Yeah, man, it was interesting. So I had actually been delivered. I was driving for Uber and Lyft after I got let go from the school and decided I was going to write this book. I'm like, I need autonomy. I need to have control of my own schedule, and I need freedom to engage and connect with people, but also to go home and to pour out. So it was really cool that I was getting some interesting interactions, and we'll talk about one of those later too that was really influential in me continuing the writing process in this book. But I was talking to a lady who was a psychologist and was kind of telling her about everything we had going on. And oh my gosh, sorry, lost my train of thought here. Question again?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm talking about Frederick Douglass II.
That's right.
And
So
the infant human, experiments.
Yep. So she brought up this. Study about human beings, adults in somewhere over in Europe, being done and disconnecting them from human interaction for like 3 months. And they shut it down because adults started dying. She's like, I can't find it anywhere anymore, but I know it was a test that was done. I know it was an experiment that was done, and it was just done in the last like 20 years. If you can find it on the internet, you should find it. So I went searching for this thing, and I couldn't find it anywhere, which I'm not surprised. In the world we live in, a lot of information, a lot of things that go on in our country and in the world as a whole are hidden from us and, or kept from us. So I stumbled upon this article that Mike had just pulled up, I believe. And I started reading into this guy, and I went, holy crap, this is exactly what she was talking about, only this was with infants. And we're talking, I think it was back in 1250 or something like that. Yeah. So this guy, Emperor Frederick, also known, nicknamed Emperor Frankenstein, he did some pretty sadistic and sick and twisted experiments on, prisoners he'd have at his castle and keep. And so he had told some nurses that he wanted to find out what the original language spoken on Earth was. And he had these infant kids and had these nurses take care of them, feed them, provide them water, shelter, but were not to interact with them. And I think it was within like 3 months, if I remember correctly. It's been so long since I actually dove into this article. But
the orders were to literally neglect except for the necessities. So
the necessities, absolutely.
Bathing, feeding, and that's it. You don't talk to them after that, or don't even acknowledge them, right?
Yeah, you've got the first 2 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs covered. You've got food and water and safety and shelter covered. So you should be able to survive as a human being. So we thought. But yet we've known for, what are we talking, almost 900 years now, that human beings can't survive without human interaction, because all these children started dying within about 3 months, and they all ended up dying because they were neglected. And his theory was that it was because of lack of love and interaction between human beings. No child spoke any words. There was none of that. So it's just it's something that really
just shut down.
Yeah,
there's one right here that some of these children starved of any types of affection, died simply because of lack of love. That's a huge statement.
Now to pull off an experiment, you got to be jacked up in the brain to do it. But so we learned from his crazy experiment. So he did it. And so basically what we have found out, if I'm hearing you correctly in that article, is that this guy gave him the necessities, food and a bath, but that's it. And then they literally shut down on themselves due to neglection and died of that way. Which until I was reading your book, until I was Googling this Frederick II and all these experiments that, mind you, people are logged in and absolutely true, all documented, I didn't even know that was a possible thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's incredible how important human connection is to the overall health of us, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, medically. It really is. And for a long time, this was hippie shit, right? This was stuff that, we would laugh off, or we would believe that it wasn't true. It was just magic and fluff. But the reality is there's physiological evidence of energetic effects on our body when we're in person and having conversations with human beings, but we don't see the same physiological effects behind a screen. So something's happening when we're in person with one another. We impact one another. Maslow's hierarchy of human needs talks about food and water and safety and shelter, but then it talks about human interaction, and connection is the 3rd level. And you can't survive if you never reach the 3rd level. And we're building.
Well, think about all the times you get messages from your friends and they're like, miss you, buddy, miss you too, miss you, miss you, miss you. And then you start talking and talking, but then you finally get together, however long it is, you go on a snowboarding trip, or like in your case, we were at your wedding and hanging out with a bunch of people there, right? And there was such a distinct difference. You can say, I miss you all day long on Facebook or Instagram. You can share pictures, and until you're in that same breathable space with that other human that you appreciate, nothing will ever come close to that. It's just like, and me and Mike have talked about this, and obviously you being in the music industry too, live stream concerts, right? It takes the human connection out of it because you're not there. You're just literally watching people on stage through a processed sound through your computer, right? And so that's a part of the human connection gone right there. So literally that articulates over to being in person at a concert, being in person with your friends, just somebody you've talked to all the time that you can bullshit with, but you get in the same room with them and there's this energy difference. And I mean, people pay attention to it. I mean, you're writing a book about it. You're so correct in this, but we're all human people. And so you obviously know this, like with your family, with friends around, you get together, you have a get together, but we've been deprived of that due to the COVID thing. Neighbors narking on neighbors. You can't even, you got to stay 6 feet away. So the human connection now is even more at a disadvantage, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's extremely palpable in our country right now how disconnected we are, not just from, you know, red and blue and black and white and all the other colors that we, you know, and halves we can throw out in this country, but truly from who we even are as human beings. I think that this has opened some people's eyes to see how important human connection is. And I think that there's some communities, you know, I'm grateful and thankful that I live in a community where we have kids playing together outside. We have neighbors drinking beers together outside and still sharing, you know, food and knocking on each other's door and sharing leftovers with one another, saying, hey, here's a warm meal that I thought you might like. I mean, I feel like I live in the, you know, the 80s again.
Well, right.
Where I live, right?
And so it kind of feels outdated, doesn't it?
It's outdated, man. It's I feel like I'm a dinosaur, you know, living in a totally new age. But if I don't conform and I don't convert, then I might not survive financially or fiscally, you know, in this world. So I have to find a way, and this book is it. I feel it, and in my spirit and my soul, like I have to find a way to talk about what's important to me, which is getting back to a healthy, stable family environment so that we can start getting back to a healthy, stable political environment and a healthy, stable balance of, you know, human experience and life before it gets out of control. I mean, my wife and I and my kids were in the car just 2 weeks ago on Valentine's Day. We were going to meet up with another family that we're friends with. And we were about 2 blocks away from this bowling alley. And this guy swerved to the left and almost slammed into our car. And I, you know, out of sheer reaction, honked the horn to let him know that he had almost hit us. Next thing you know, we get over in the right to get away from him because he starts brake checking us. And he tries to slam our car again. And we have to accelerate to the right to get away from him, and he pins us in to where we hit head on into 2 parked cars and total our vehicle. Now, I tell you this story because I feel bad for the guy. The guy had such an emotional response to a horn being honked because he almost put somebody's life in danger that he needed to emotionally react out of frustration of that horn and that sound, or even maybe feeling exposed that he did something wrong and put somebody else at more of a detriment. We see this type of activity in our society so much.
So
when things doesn't like agree.
But so when things like that happen, right? Do you feel like, okay, so when you're on your screen and you're just looking at your phone and stuff, like you're in a bubble where nothing else exists but that screen, right? So when you're driving and you're alone in your car and you hear that, you're still in your bubble, right? And there's still no connection due to, you know, metal fabrications in your car separating you from the other metal fabrications. And so you're still in that bubble. So it's the same thing. Instead of a screen got you going here, you got the road going here, but you're protected. You're still in your introvert zone. And
you nailed it, man.
He heard that horn and he lost his emotional response. Now, had he have seen your kids, had he have seen you face to face, had he have been able to talk to you about why you honked that horn, but you can't do that because we're all in our little bubbles. We're all in a rush. And we're all, when we're driving, and don't say you don't, anybody listening to this, we're all looking at our phones, baby. You know, like,
yep. Hey,
so,
I'm not writing this book because I'm perfect. I'm writing this book
right.
because I see some problems that I think we have solutions to within us and within the palm of our hands. But I really do think that we're not set up for success in our culture in America for us to thrive within the human experience, which is that connection and interaction. It's the way we enlighten one another. It's the way that we grow smarter. It's the way ideas grow and you know, and end up becoming something greater than they ever could have if it was just one man. I mean, there's importance to connection. I mean, shoot, if you're a believer or even if you're not, there needed to be interaction between man and woman physically. They needed to connect in order for procreation to take place and our race to survive. So connection is the most important piece to all of humanity, if you ask me. And in our country, we're so focused on replacing real connection with false connections like the one we're on right now. This is a great forum to stay connected with people you're not close to. It's also a great forum to take you away from any true human experience, because I could say something to you right now that could cause you to be completely offended or even question yourself for the rest of your life to the point that you want to take your life. The problem is I can shut the screen and walk away. There's no accountability, just like there isn't in that car, because you're in a metal box where you can destroy somebody else's life and drive away. So there's no accountability held anymore. And instead of accountability, I believe in this country, we appease problems rather than solve them. We don't hold people accountable. We just say, oh, that offended somebody, let's change something, rather than going, is this a true problem or is this something that needs to be talked through? And maybe just decided that we disagree, and that's okay. You know, we need to change the whole world for it. So I feel like the empathy's gone. You know, there's no empathetic response if I shut that screen and I don't see you hurting, crying, you know, or maybe even distraught, wondering how you're going to survive through the thought that you're this worthless after the statement I made. You know, it doesn't take much communication skills to type something out and sit here and think of a response every time that you see a post, and to be clever after a half hour of rewriting something. You know what it does take? You know, it does take communication skills and critical thinking and conflict resolution when you make that statement in person. And you feel the empathetic response kick in because it hurt their feelings. And you have to think, oh my gosh, how am I going to make this right? What am I going to do? Because I'm a human being and I don't like the way that's made that person feel, because I wouldn't like the way it made me feel. So now I have to talk to this person and engage my communication skills. I have to resolve the conflict by figuring out how I'm going to make this right. And that's all because my empathetic response kicked in. And now I'm critically thinking about all of that stuff. And you know what? Once I communicate to you and I get your forgiveness, I've just started to build a relationship. So I've engaged my relationship building skills. All 5 of those skills in the frontal lobe that I said are being detrimented by the screen time and also by many other things. It's like a 20-legged dog that we need to have all legs working at the same time in order for this thing to start running the right way. But right now, I think we have like 18 broken legs and a couple legs that could work if we even knew what the heck they were.
I still think that goes, like, a lot of what you're saying goes back to the inconvenience, because while I think screen sharing and all that kind of stuff is a huge, you know, issue part of it, I think also like the ability for humans to actually interact with each other and be honest. I think that if they broke that barrier, like for instance, let's say like you've got a conflict with a friend. If you don't actually talk about that conflict, if you don't actually try and see their perspective and they see yours, you're never going to get anywhere. And then you're never a real, like, you're not a real definition of the word friend or even brother or blood, whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, or just human being, let's call it, you know. I mean, we're here to connect and help one another out. You know, and yeah, it's going to be dirty and uncomfortable, and it's going to be, you know, offensive sometimes. In order for us to grow, though, it's just like a muscle, man. Our brains grow just like a muscle. You know, nobody, let's be honest, guys, we all work out, we all want to look good, right? We all like having ourselves in shape. We feel better, we function better, we sleep better, we're happier. You know, there's a lot of positives that come through from it, but if I could take a pill, or if I could just snap my fingers and have a 6-pack tomorrow, huge pecs, big boulders for shoulders, and feel as good as I do when I spend every single day working out and doing cardio and focusing on my diet, then I would do that. I'd just snap my fingers and have it done, because that's ultimately, I want the feeling, right? But the beauty of life, the beauty of the human experience is what you said, Micah, the work, the discomfort, the displeasure, because that's where the growth comes from. Muscles don't grow unless you tear them down. And you got to go in there and you got to do uncomfortable movements with uncomfortable weights that nobody really wants to do. If anybody, even bodybuilders, say, I wanted to get big this exact way, it's bullshit. They you know, like, truthfully, man, I did bodybuilding. If I could have snapped my fingers and won a gold medal, stand on stage looking great, and had all the girls after me, like, you know, the hard work paid off. Like, I would have.
And no, and you're absolutely right. And so do you think, that leads me to ask this question, is do you think that innovation and technology and all these new inventions that are just literally more convenient, like you hinted on earlier, all we got to do now is tap a button and food's at our doorstep, you know? And so do you think that all this innovation, technology, new inventions, and everything for convenience has led to the death of the human experience?
I absolutely attribute a lot of it to it. A life of ease does not bring growth. And if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Just like muscles will atrophy if you don't use them, the brain will atrophy, and the parts of the brain that you're not using will atrophy if you don't use them. Think about how many addresses and how many phone numbers you remember from your friends and from your parents and your family from when you were kids. 33644 Breckenridge Trail, Lake Elsinore, California. Yeah, that was my address from when I was 8 until I was 13 years old.
And how do I remember that? 92-year-old woman living there is going to get robbed. So,
but I mean, you could remember this stuff, right? Yeah, you know, these were things that, and now I can barely remember my wife's phone number because it's on my phone. It's there. Right. I don't have to do it. I don't have to remember it. I don't have to cook food. I don't have to put an effort to meet a girl. All I can do is like send her a dick pic. And if she likes the way it looks, she might show up to my house and just want me to put a ring on it in 6 months because she likes my, 6-story house and my fancy car and the money that provides, the lifestyle that provides her.
Like, and how many people are resorting to that? Tinder's a Fortune 500 company now? So,
man, we have Tinder, we have Chime, we have Bumble on the jerseys of professional basketball players.
Right. Yeah.
We're telling people to lower your self-worth, to not put in any effort in life, and to hope that that's going to pay off with a healthy, bountiful relationship.
The worst part about that is, no, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think the worst part about that is people that aren't that are willing to put the work in and be a little uncomfortable and go above and beyond, they're looked down on as troublemakers, or as, like we were part of this podcast, the guilty party.
Right? Yeah, we're shunned, man. We're looked at as like you said, outcasts, and as almost like a disease. Like, I opened a car door for a girl most of the time when I was dating, and they'd look at me like I was a problem. Like, what are you doing? I can handle that myself. Well, I'm sorry. I know you can, but I was just trying to be a gentleman. Are you that offended that I was trying to be a gentleman? This is so weird. Okay, well then next time I'll make sure I put the roses at your feet so you can step on them before we go on our dates. Yeah. Instead of put them in a vase inside. I mean, it's really a weird culture that we've built. But Mike, I think you hit it on the head too. Our parents didn't know what they were doing. And as human beings, if we don't know what we don't know. And TVs came out in the 60s, commonly in homes, advertising that was psychologically, influenced to make these people buy, and that we're doing it from a scientific level to make sure that we were buying and consuming more than ever. So we weren't getting any wealthier. We weren't getting any healthier because we were, exposed to advertisement for things that were unhealthy to us, like the foods, the processed and over preserved foods, which also don't help develop a lot of gray matter when you're going through your developmental stages. And then we overworked parents too in the 60s, the good movements, women's right movement and all this stuff. But now we have the dual income family system. So both parties are going because life's expensive. They've got so much stuff they've got to pay for.
Yep.
So now what do? Instead of cutting the hours for parents and sending them home to these kids, we just create the TV dinner, which is even more nutritionally, invaluable to their system. And now they're sitting behind the TV screen, which is detrimental to their gray matter development. They're eating food that doesn't help develop gray matter, and they're receiving psychological neglect from their overworked parents who are coming home exhausted and don't have any time for them. So they're receiving almost a double or triple atrophy of gray matter in the frontal lobe. We're not even growing humans at that point.
And so their wandering minds are looking for answers, right? And then they hear they hear a song, they watch a video on YouTube, they find something out there, because when you're a young person,
turn to us.
Exactly. We're looking for answers. Yeah. We are so many questions in our head. And when we find that artist, we find that movie that answers one of those questions, we latch on to it. And then we start following that behavior, because you know what? That person matters to me that's not even real in that show, because that one show answered a question I'd been asking for years. And I got neglect, and I never got that question answered, but now I do. So I'm following that guy.
So does it go back to role models? Because I mean, think about it. Who is the role models back? Let's say in our age, the 90s or the early 2000s.
Oh, bro, it was undoubtedly Stone Cold Steve Austin. Undoubtedly.
Crushing PBRs right and left time.
Yes.
Yeah. But think about it, so now in this day and age, it's more apparent than ever with screen time on role models when it comes to how do we portray the human family or the American family in this world. Dads are looked down upon as they can't take care of their own kids. That when they help their wives, it's like, oh, you're doing a good job, great job. It's like, no, we're a team. I can parent just as much as my wife can. And then you see kids just running around doing whatever. There's no discipline. And I think that there's two extremes of discipline we see, in this day and age. It's harsh because they think that they know what's best for their kid, or the complete opposite where they let them get away with anything. So if we take that back to, let's say, the 90s, I don't remember because I probably wasn't old enough to understand what I was seeing, but what was the role models back then that if we're seeing that back then, we're growing up to now have our own kids and, have our kids have their experiences. Do you think it goes back to role models of who we're seeing and how we're interacting with to teach our own kids?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to bring up the word connection again, but it's I truly believe it's what we're connected to, right? We didn't have all that stuff to distract us. We didn't have, iPads and cell phones in our pockets with big screens connected to the internet. Hell, I barely had the internet when I was in middle school and high school, so we didn't
around
have
91.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there. Yeah, I mean, it's so you have. We didn't have the ease again of connection to these forums that are genuinely trying to steal your attention so they can make money and keep you addicted and connected to them so they can make money. We didn't have that. What we did have was our family environment, our neighbors, the kids around us, our cousins, our aunts, our uncles. We had athletes and maybe some performers and musicians and people of that nature, but we also didn't have access to every single bit of information about their lives either. So we were almost naive in some of our role models, but there's a beauty of that, I think, as a kid, when it comes to athletes and some of these people, also I think it's important to know the reality of who it was. A man like Kobe Bryant is somebody who I talk about a lot in my life. He's been a huge influence on me, but that man lived the human experience. He made some huge poor decisions for his life that brought some huge issues on, and had to make the best out of it. And really, started investing in connection with kids, connection with higher enlightened people, connection with what was going on and what was to fulfill the human soul and spirit, So anywho,
I think we've seen a huge shift in role models too, because I'm sure everyone knows The Rock. He's probably one of the biggest social media figures out there. And his emphasis has always been, family and taking time, no matter how busy you are, to spend time with them. But then you shift back, let's say the 90s, the movie The Sandlot. One of the probably the biggest moments that I remember is the entire movie. You know, I think it was not playing with the stepdad. His stepdad was doing a bunch of stuff, and then one of the last scenes is he's playing catch with his stepdad. And so you think back that you hold on to that to his kid, or you probably experiencing the same thing. Your dad's always working, maybe your mom's busy too. It doesn't give you a lot of positive thinking to think, okay, you know what? When I have kids, I'm going to do differently. It's gonna be like, right. Well, what's the difference? You know, everyone else is doing the same thing. It's just a vicious cycle.
Well, and so
it normalizes the behavior too, right?
Yes. You know? We do too much normalizing, and we don't do enough. Like, let's make that change.
And this is just 100. Like my personal experience, but I also want to state that, like, I had two, and I don't want to name them on this show, but they know who they are. But I had two very important friends in my upbringing, and their mothers, and I would say both their mothers and fathers were very strict on these kids, as opposed to how strict my parents were on me. My parents, you know, just be home at a certain time. They gave me a lot of leverage, you know, but they also trusted me a lot, you know, like I got in a lot of trouble, but I never got caught. So it doesn't matter. And but these kids had a very strict, you have to be home before sundown. I don't want you doing this. I don't want you doing X. And they had so many rules on them to where it was maintenance hanging out with them. In order to do it, you had to, like, oh, please, like, I promise, like, I'll have them home at this time, or like, I promise that we're just going to go, like, over here and read Bibles, and we're not going to a bonfire that has beer, I swear. And so, like, things like that would happen. So these kids finally grew up, went to college, and now mommy and daddy aren't there to put 377 rules on them like they had. And they realized they got this
I know lots of kids like that.
Yeah. So they realized, right, they got this taste of freedom. And when they got this taste of freedom, dude, they went off the hinges. And I mean, into hard drugs, into bad atmospheres. These kids aren't, I would never want my kids around them out of fear for my kids. But I used to be friends with these people, and these people used to be good. But I mean, my long-winded point is they had so much friction on them as far as rules that when they got the taste of freedom, they rebelled. So what I mean by that is, like, it is possible. It's all about finding the balance, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think it's possible to go too far in prevention, that because you prevented too much, you caused stuff, right? And so because you let too much happen, you open the gateway. But if you kept it right here and used prevention and cause, and you just had that balance, I think the world can learn a lot from that. But that is, in my opinion, the key and secret to life is balance. Once you figure out balance, how to supplement your time, how to supplement your relationships, how to supplement balance your finances, or hell, just balance your diet. Hardest shit in the world, right? But balance is everything. But when we figure it out, right? So my question, like, to you, Johnny, is like, do you think a lot of the death of the human experience is due to neglect of balance?
Yeah, I mean, there's no balance between home and work life. There's no balance between I don't even think we understand what a balanced diet is.
Right.
You know, if we break it down scientifically, we look at our design, we look at the way that you know, our teeth are formed, our intestines and their length, and the way that they digest foods. It's like, we're so far off base on what we're teaching in America. It's crazy. But so I think that there's, you know, but again, that's balance too, right? We're very meat based in our diet. So I'm not saying that we need to be 100% vegan, but there's a balance to it.
That would offset the balance, right? It'd be too much veggies at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, you got to have that 80-20, you know, to 70-30 balance that you'll find is heavy, and the 80 and the 70 is more plant-based, and there's only 20 to 30% protein. But these are things we've known for years. We just in America neglect information that doesn't sit well with us, it seems to be.
Right. No, there's a sense of entitlement to everything.
Yeah. You know? I mean, in the 60s, we were yelling we were the best while we were still, you know, behind closed doors, killing people that were standing up for social justice and rights.
Right. 100%.
And then displaying it as something that was to be cheered for. It's like, you know, we're not that far removed from racism, because the people that were racist and wanting to have this be the way that we lived are now elder people who are raising their grandchildren and great-grandchildren and their great-great-grandchildren who have these values of still instilling.
It's
like,
crazy that it's so,
you know?
like you're saying, like it's not that far removed. I mean, when they signed
one person ago,
that document where they allowed interracial marriage was 64, 68, something like that.
Yeah.
If that happened, that was only like if you.
I was literally just watching a movie on that shit, and I couldn't believe that that's real. That is real, and I'm like,
yeah,
that was.
If it had happened, I would not be alive today, because my parents would have not been able to get married.
100%, right? I couldn't even be with Susie at that point, right?
Yeah,
interracial, like, and dude, it dumbfounded me that America was that ignorant. But hey, we were only that ignorant. Like what is that? 50 years ago, 68. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do the quick math on that. 40.
It's not long. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, and so that's where we've come from. So are we out of touch to say, hey, we're pretty damn stupid. Why don't we like go back to the chalkboard? Because everything that we think we think works clearly doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I think we're that out of touch, but I think we're also that far in. It's literally, that's why I'm writing my book. It's going to take cultural shift, in my opinion, but it's got to start within the family environment. And the only, because in my belief, the only way that we've ever seen, if you think about real cultural change in from government down, or, you know, in countries, it was a civil uprising that took this change to happen. There was some sort of pressure, you know, that just burst, and finally the people stood up for what they felt was right and overtook whatever was going on, or lost it, and that country stayed where they were. We're at the point where there's got to be some sort of social civil uprising. I just don't want to see it be violent, because we're getting to a very toxic and violent level in our country right now, from political to emotional and mental to even just physical. So if we can start educating people on what's healthy to connect to and what's unhealthy to connect to turn your screens off if you've been on them for 2 hours, you know, don't go over 2 hours of screen time. Understand what you're putting into your body and what it's going to do to your kids' brain development or physical development, instead of just buying a McDonald's because it's the easy thing to do every single night after soccer practice. Right. You know, maybe that's the one time a month, or once every other week that you do. No big deal. I'm not going to knock anybody for that, but let's be real, people. What's been open during COVID and making money? All the crap restaurants, while any healthy food you could get, you were inconvenienced to go get, so you didn't do it. They made everything easier on us to be more disconnected than ever before, to stay home and be more isolated, less human connection and enlightenment and development, and less healthy, nutritional value being fed to us on a regular basis, because McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell and all these places were, hopping. They never had to shut down. So
no,
I think it goes back to, like you're saying, on the human connection. It starts in the family, and I think it goes out to your community. So, like, for instance, I've got a buddy that we try to meet regularly and just have coffee and talk about goals and stuff like that. But we also kind of talk about our personal experiences as dads and the family and just different things like that. And I think when you do more of less telling someone, hey, this is what I'm doing, you need to do this, of more like, hey, this is the situation. This is how I'm kind of trying to remedy it. And hopefully that rubs off on someone, that they eventually do the same thing, that rubs off on someone else they talk to. And boom, what everyone thinks that's never going to happen because it would take forever, it only took one generation to make a shift.
You got it, man. And truly, is it going to take one generation to make this shift? Well, no, because if we think about the adults that would grow into parents, it's going to take about 30 years for us to see any real cultural shift at the earliest. But we're not even having this conversation, on public media sources, with politicians and psychologists and mental health, specialists. They're not screaming from the mountaintops that this is the most important piece of our human experience and our human development and our overall health. So
no, you know what they're screaming? They're screaming for you to stay indoors and eat that shit food,
Right.
And it's like,
and for your parents to keep working more, because now they're home and now they can just take calls at any hour, on any day.
Yeah. And it's the damnedest thing. And because all you've seen is more disconnect. All you've seen is more hatred on all social media platforms. I mean, you go back and look at and everyone can blame it on the pandemic. But if you took the invisible enemy away, if you took COVID away, you have a bunch of people locked inside, their houses, having to wear masks. You can't even, if you smiled at somebody, it doesn't make a damn, because they wouldn't even know. And we all know in this world how powerful a smile is. A smile can change somebody's day,
Brother, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I put a post up about this, us getting to this point, and I already saw it happening about 10 or 11 years ago. I posted on Facebook and got attacked by people. How could you say that this is a toxic environment? How could you say that this isn't a good place for us to, have these conversations and to talk about things? I'm like, because you're not actually feeling the empathy that you need to feel when you make a statement like, you can go F yourself because you say you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, and it's that simple. And by the way, you're my uncle and I'm your nephew, and we've had a great relationship up until this point.
Up until it came down to policy, or it came down to candidate, right?
Yeah, man. It's
so
very.
Well, it goes back to the face-to-face interaction. It's super, super easy. Let's say, when the birth of social media really took off about 5-10 years ago, to have a conversation from, on the other side of the world, and just that's it. Like you said, that's what it is. Versus when you have that same conversation in person, you have that human connection, which the social media side, that's not a real human connection. Let's all be real. That's just a bunch of characters, ones and zeros, that hopefully is conveying a very small part of the message you're trying to convey to someone.
Well, and a huge part about the social media thing that I have to emphasize is that you literally so Johnny or Micah, you could type something to me. It doesn't matter what you typed. I am interpreting your tone and your attitude with me. It's not just tone. I'm interpreting your attitude as well. And so attitude is everything, because I could be like, eat shit, Johnny.
Well, think about how many times we've got pissed off on a band text feed, and it's like we had to call each other up like, oh, that's what you're saying? Okay, well, we're fine then.
Yeah.
How many relationships are broken up because of a text message misconstrued or read wrong or taken the wrong way? I mean, and that's, again, we're disconnected from one another so much, we don't even understand what we're missing. It used to be said that it was like 75% of communication is nonverbal. We now know 95% of what we hear from another human being is nonverbal. It doesn't effing matter what words are coming out. Only 5% of it is the words, and the other 95% is your tone, your facial expressions, the volume, your delivery, your proximity to the person, and all this shit that we don't practice for those 11 hours we're behind a screen on average per human in the United States. So we're doing less human things for more of these 16 hours we're awake on average per human than we are doing human things, whereas our life was doing human things all the time until about the mid to late 80s.
Right. No, absolutely. And communities were way more tight, and just like you brought up earlier, right? When it used to be a thing, it used to be and also a Southern thing. It used to be very traditional to walk over to your neighbor's house and give them a thing of Jell-O if they were new, or bake them a cake if they were new. You do that today, you're bound to get shot. You do that today, you're bound to get called out. God forbid if somebody has a Ring doorbell on there and they're like, who's this person trying to bring me Jell-O, right? And and then they upload it to Facebook and everyone clowns that person, and then the neighbor sees it,
I mean, if anybody brings me a fruitcake these days, I might shoot them if they're bringing it to my house, but I'd take a casserole.
It has to be casserole, okay? It ain't tuna casserole. Don't get it twisted. It ain't tuna casserole.
You're right. And and what I'm doing for income right now, sometimes I'm going door to door because I'm doing a form of home construction. And it's like, oh, I see a piece of construction that needs to be up to code, and I'm just going to knock on their door and leave a card and let them know that I'm here to do that. And so many people will, not even have a no soliciting sign, just go away, I don't want it. And it's like, wow. It's crazy
They're
to me.
just
Like,
nervous to even talk to a person.
we have gotten so hypersensitive, and my theory is, again, that the detriment of gray matter is causing us to be here, because when you atrophy enough gray matter in the frontal lobe of the brain, which is where those 5 skills, communication skills, critical thinking, conflict resolution, empathetic response, and relationship skills, it's where they're housed.
The medulla oblongata.
When you atrophy the gray matter in the frontal lobe, what it tangibly looks like is inappropriate acts in public, violent acts, anxiety, depression, and suicide. And those people are anxiety filled behind those doors.
Oh, 100%.
And they're freaking out because they don't know how to handle what they're feeling, and they've never been told what they're feeling. And we're not talking about I mean, shit, mental health still has a dark stigma in our society. We're just now seeing commercials come out about, oh, let's change the stigma around mental health. Yeah, for what? 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds that have already been struggling with it for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And now, this is where we're at. Now you've got people like my dad who want to get better, but he's been taught his whole life that he doesn't talk about getting better because he doesn't talk about the problem. So if you're a man and you have a problem, it's weak.
And this is kind of a sub issue, but also the other concern to that is, what's the remedy? Are you going to give me a man-made pill for me to get my life better, and then I have to be a slave to that pill and go find a doctor and start withdrawing from it because I need that pill to survive? Is that your remedy for me? Or should I really try to find balance in my life and try to find joy in God's creation?
Again, connected to the wrong things. We throw people into Western medicine when in reality, you could change your diet to change some depression or medical issues. You could change your environment or the people that your activities, your daily activities. You could even just, you could go to alternative medicines. Let's talk about marijuana. That helps a lot of people with anxiety. Why would you take a pill that could become addictive, cause a part of your brain to function at a lower, value? And then when you're off that pill, it opens the other part of the brain function that it's been suppressing for so long up like a floodgate. And then you take your life. Oh, and I'm talking about benzos. And that's something that we just prescribe prescription after prescription daily for no reason to people that don't need it. What they need to be is loved on and eating the right things and possibly, changing their lifestyle choices. And then let's talk about maybe, some narcotics at the end of the day, once we've tried every other alternative, because people were surviving and getting past this stuff for thousands of years before we were America.
100%, but it's just like we talked about earlier. And what we talked about earlier is the convenience. Okay, all my problems are wrapped up in this piece of Oxycontin or Vicodin or this painkiller to take it all away from me, or this antidepressant pill, this Effexor. So all I got to do is take that. All I got to do is hit this button to order food. All I got to do is hit this button to get a ride. It's just convenient. Boom. Click. Click.
Yeah, but it never fully satisfies you. I feel like that no matter what small part of convenience that you act on. So, like, let's say you order, Uber Eats, you're getting Taco Bell. As soon as you eat it, you feel like crap afterwards. Same thing with any other type of inconvenience. There's always it's only hitting like 60, 70%. You still feel that void inside of you. So it can't be the end all be all. There's got to be a big major change, which is one thing I wanted to kind of bring up next is with the start of COVID and everyone starting to work remote from a business aspect. And, with music, we don't know when that's coming back. More bands are doing live streams and type of social media pushes and stuff like that. Where do you see the direction of businesses and the way that humans interact from a work standpoint? Because this goes back to your thing of parents being overworked. If you're in front of a screen, 8-10 hours a day working, is that even going to amplify the problem even more? Because, like, for instance, I work in the tech industry. So a lot of our clients that we work with, they've started shifting almost 70 to 80% of the workforce entirely remote. That changes everything. The way that you interact, you're not going to walk next door to your coworker's office and ask them a question or, not attack them, but, it's like, hey, why isn't this project, on schedule or anything like that? So where do you see that all that encompasses and goes to?
Oh, I mean, I think we're at such a tipping point right now. We're on this teeter-totter, really, in our culture. We've already gotten to the point where human interactions at such a huge detriment, even though people will say, you're crazy. I interact with human beings all day long. No, you don't really interact with them. It's not in person like most of our day. But I do think we got to balance it again. There's two key words is connection and balance, if you ask me, as well as, being vulnerable. Vulnerability is a huge one too. But the connection or the balance of, working from home so that we have more autonomy, more freedom to make our schedules, to be there for our kids, to help them with school, or to pick them up from school and maybe make dinner and stuff like that is important. But I think we're also realizing how important it is to have that interaction with people outside of our family too. It can't just be our family. It starts with our families, but we need people outside of our families to grow bigger, better, stronger, more enlightened, more, responsive instead of reactionary in our lives. And so I do believe we have to take some really fragile steps with this whole process and not go too much the other direction. 70 to 80% of workforce is 100% remote. I would say if we've got to balance it like 3 days remote and 2 days in the workplace, or maybe vice versa. If we're going to stick with a 5-day workday, hell, I'd even go with 2 days in the office, 2 days at home, and give us 3 days off and start watching production go through the roof, because people actually have more freedom to invest in themselves and their self-health and their families. And they're also having the autonomy to work from a comfortable place, which is home sometimes, and then go and get fed and maybe sometimes neutralized or sparked and fired up by their employees that help, and understand that type of lifestyle and workflow, because your spouse doesn't always get it.
Let's talk about that for a second. I like that you brought that up on the 3-day day off, because that's very big in Europe, especially in Europe. I mean, I have a client that they're in Italy and they have something similar to that. And I know the stigma here in America is, you work super hard and you get all the rewards and stuff, and you have to put in, 5 days a week, 40 hours, and that's the minimum. Let's not talk about everyone else who's working, between 5 to 7 days a week, working 100 to 120 hours. So
I think average is like 52 hours a week for Americans right now. Something like that.
Yeah.
That's crazy,
so
man.
How do you think, if, again, I know you're talking about we have to make that change. So if we're talking about from a political standpoint, if we were to propose like, hey, let's go to a 3-day, weekend, how do we balance that we're actually being productive and we're not looking forward to like, oh, it's 3 days off, I can do whatever, and more looking at it as a benefit to us, like, hey, this is another day for me to recharge, reset, spend time with my family, spend time on myself, my mental health, and make a good change going forward, versus just like, I'm getting an extra day off.
Yeah, I mean, I think balance and boundaries with it. We've got to have, again, you have to understand that time and the importance of it is for investment in yourself and the people and the human connection and the interaction that you need to thrive as a human being. Because if you're just going home and sitting on a screen for 3 days playing video games because you're like 3 days off the game, you're going to be the same. It's backfiring. It's backfiring. So again, I think it starts in the family environment where we educate and enlighten from a young age and start changing and shifting our culture and teaching kids what they should and shouldn't be connected to, and the importance of work and what it provides us, because it provides us purpose. It provides us financial stability. It provides us opportunity. It provides us peace of mind and a tool to really accomplish some really cool experiences and things, and to maybe enhance our lives and our experiences and things with our family. But when it becomes an idol, like it is in America, we forget about all the other stuff that it's supposed to provide, so,
I wanted to bring the story up since we're on like the video game thing, and that being still screen time, that's still, anybody putting in 12 to 15 hours on a game, one, I can't imagine they smell good. Two, I can't imagine. I mean, let's just start there. But two, I can't imagine that they've had any connection, and I'm sure they have friends, but all their connection is here, right? So, I mean, if anybody wanted to hang out with them, how could they even be a good friend when they're that committed to something that is literally their own selfishness, right? To play it. So
they've built no social skills.
There's this guy that won I don't know if it was a couple years ago, but he had an acceptance speech for winning an NBA 2K award, right? And he was just like, they're like, how much do you play 2K? He's like, all day, every day. And they're like joking. They're like, no, really. And he goes, no, literally all day, every day. That's how I got good at this. Like, and all I could think about this guy was, how much life did you miss to get some generated video game award?
So much.
And how much you missed out on life. And he said he had a family, he said he had a bunch of friends, but you're calling bullshit because you're like, there's no way you have friends if you're literally ignoring them. And also another illusion that social media gives people, because I truly think this guy thought this, was he's like, oh, my friends, man, they're in the game, you know, like they're usernames. Usernames are my friends. Yep. Or just like Facebook. On Facebook, it says I have 4,800 friends. Do you really think I have 4,800 actual friends in this life? No, I got like 7.5. He's a little dude. Yeah. He's good. He's a good dude. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. No, I got like I got like a lot. I don't know how many friends I actually have, but I know damn well it's not 4,800, you know? And,
right.
And so that's an illusion in itself. And so there's some people that get so selfied and they get so caught up in my fans, my followers, my loves, my peeps. And it's like, it's all an illusion.
Yeah, those are the same people that are sitting in the hotel rooms eating a large pizza after she just posed in her yellow bikini and took a picture of a Rolex watch, you know, saying how much fun she's having in Cancun. And she's got a bottle of pills on her nightstand ready to take her life because she's miserable. But everybody wants to be her and everybody wants to hang out with her. And this is the culture that we paint. Yeah. You know, and that kid playing video games for 3 days, it says he has a bunch of friends, put him out in the real world. And if he orders Starbucks and they don't have a freaking mocha, they're out of mocha, he might pull a gun out and shoot him because he doesn't know how to interact and how to not get his way because he orders everything from his video game from the couch and gets it delivered just the way he wants it.
Right. No,
and also, yeah, he's been demanding everything from Siri his whole life. And been able to call her whatever he wanted with no backlash, been able to tell her what to do. I mean, we're literally breeding less humans.
Well, and so think about this. You ever played a video game? And I'm not knocking video games. Like I still play a little bit, just I don't put in the hours I used to. I think everything's balanced and I think it's a nice little break, you know, so I'm not knocking video games. But have you ever played a video game where you thought about or you did smash the controller? That's a prime example of something that's generated, not real, causing a reaction out of you that caused a physical anger. And so you took it out
to you.
Right.
And then you have to go spend more money.
Oh, yeah, there you go. And then, but also it's like, okay, well, attribute that to anything else or attribute that to anything else. Right. And if you don't get the desired effect, are you going to smash that thing in front of you or that person? If the meter doesn't work or if the toilet doesn't flush, you're just going to go smash the toilet or are you going to fix the problem? Fixing that problem.
That's what we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. Fixing
that
problem. That's what we're
seeing in our society.
100%. And I think fixing that problem would have been putting down that controller and taking a break from that game that has now somehow got in your head and caused you to be aggressive. You know,
you've got to have enough gray matter to slow your brain down, get out of the emotional reactionary phase, because we're human beings. We feel that first. We feel things and emotionally store things before we ever can come out with a proper response. Because, hey, if I've been jobless for 6 months and my friend comes over and goes, hey, how many applications have you put in? How many jobs have you called? How many places have you been contacting? And I go, nobody, dude, but I really need a fucking job. And he goes, well, get off your ass and start doing something about it. Nowadays, we have people that be like, get out of my house for telling me to get off my ass. That was so rude.
100%.
Well, yeah, that's because it doesn't feel good to hear somebody say, get off your ass. And it honestly, that's emotionally like, I want to tell you to get out of my house because I'm already feeling bad enough. But the reality is I need to get off my ass and put in some applications and call some jobs. So he's doing me a solid and doing a positive thing by telling me to do that. But I have to process past my emotional response and feelings first to get to a proper response, which is, oh, yep, need to get off my ass and get a job. Thanks, bro. I've been way too depressed and way too self-involved and way too anxiety-filled every single day to call and talk to anybody. I just needed somebody to tell me what I was doing wrong, and I literally needed to hear that to break the cycle. Thanks so much. But it's crazy to me that we've gotten to a place in our country and in our culture where if it doesn't feel good, it isn't good. Life's not supposed to feel good all the time. You know, again, back to the muscles. It doesn't feel good if you gave your arms, your legs, your chest, everywhere a good workout. It doesn't feel good. You're sore. You're tight. You can't bend your arms as much. It hurts to carry groceries that you were just like slinging over the freaking house yesterday. You know, you can barely lift a carton of milk if you lift right and you're sore, you know, but
100%. Yeah.
But the growth that comes from it, when you look 6 months down the road, you look like what you wanted to look like, and your muscles function and, you know, have the strength you wanted them to have because you were really uncomfortable and you did really detrimental things to those muscle fibers by tearing them down and having them grow and build bigger and stronger. And our brains grow the same way. And overall in human life, I think, period in life, things grow the same way.
I think it's two things, man. And what I think it boils down to is one, this social media thing where it's keeping up with the Joneses, because you got friends that are more successful than you out there, or not even friends. You got people in your life that you admire that are doing better things than what you have done up to this point in your life. Now you feel measured up. Now you feel anything that you have done in your life that's worth noting doesn't measure up to their success. So I won't note it. I won't even acknowledge it, because until I beat them, I lose. But now you're competing with somebody you admire. Now you're trying to be measured up to them, and you have based your entire self-worth upon their post. Their one post has literally all your life's work went to shit because now their post has made you insecure about your self-worth. And so I think it's that. And like,
competition culture.
Oh, 100%. And then the other thing is I think that it's a sense of entitlement. Like we are so free in this world that it takes you to have to travel to other countries like Micah and I have on tours and stuff to realize how good you really have it here. When you talk to the citizens in Germany, when you talk to the citizens in Italy, you know, and I think Micah was there with me when I asked this guy in Germany, I said, why does everyone look super uniform around here? Everyone's got the crew cut. Everyone's completely clean shaved, wearing almost the same jackets. And the guy said something to me I'll never forget. He goes, in Germany, we have Germans. And what that meant was we don't really allow anybody else here. It's uniform. You stay past your visa, you can be held at the foreign embassy. You can actually be shot if you stay even longer and refuse to get it, you know. And so they're like, here in America, we have it so good that there's an entitlement that comes with that, because it's so easy to click a button, because you can get in your car and go Uber tomorrow. You can go DoorDash tomorrow. You can go make money. That now there's just this like, well, if it's that easy, I guess I'll just put it off because I can always go do it. And so I'll just play this game and I'll watch my bank account go all the way down until I need more money in that bank account. Then I won't get in that car and go. And there's just like this sense of entitlement. That's what it is, man. You know,
I would even go as far to say that it's not even that we have it good. We have it too easy. You know, I think you hit it on the head, Micah, when you mentioned that earlier, because it's not good to have things easy. If it was, our muscles would grow when we were doing easy workouts. Our brains would be growing right now while things were easy for us. We wouldn't see people, and we wouldn't see mental health through the roof. We wouldn't see divorce statistics through the roof. We wouldn't see suicides of kids 8 and older through like 14 through the roof right now. We wouldn't see any of these things, you know, and so It's just crazy. I wanted to mention a couple things. You guys mentioned Europe a couple times, and I've traveled to Europe a few times in my life. And it's kind of funny, you know, like you said, you don't realize how easy we have it over here until you go over there. But you also don't realize some of the lack of nutritional value or lack of connection or lack of work-life balance that we have here until you get over there either. Because you brought up the 4-day work week. Right. So we've got the 4-day work weeks that Europe's big on. They make you take vacation regularly throughout the year. They push you. Some countries make you take minimum of a week a month. Okay. They invest in your kids. They invest in your families because they give you minimum 6 to 9 months, you know, maternity and paternity leave, men and women.
Yeah.
Some countries some countries allow their single or their newborn moms and newborn fathers to take a year to 2 years off and pay them to just stay at home and raise their kids to make sure they're raising healthy children. You know, we're the only country as well that allows pharmaceutical marketing in the form of ad campaigns on commercials and Facebook and social media and stuff like that. No other country allows pharmaceutical commercials to be played on television in their country. We're the only ones. Pharmaceuticals should not be something that are marketed. It's something that you are given for a diagnosis to cure a problem.
That a doctor who knows their stuff should be doing instead of you deciding, like, hey, this is the new and improved that I should get. No.
But what do we do here in America? We give doctors bonuses for writing painkillers for fentanyl, for other things. They give them bonuses because they're trying to get their product in the mouths of Americans and get them hooked on that product because it's profit.
So I think that's the real trade-off we have right now is we have the freedom here in the U.S. to do anything we want. And I don't want to say we need to take that away because freedom is very precious in this country and in the world versus we have Europe where they have so many benefits, but they have it so locked down, then that's why they can have that happen. They can have so much paternity leave. They can have everything regulated. They can have it where you're only working 4 days a week and they make you take that vacation because whether they believe in mental health or not, they believe that you should have that time for the family versus here. It's so unlocked that it's a wild west out here.
Bro, too much freedom is too much freedom. It's detrimental. It's why I say the word boundaries. And, you know, in the way I had a description that was given to me one time about boundaries or that I read about. And so boundaries are like a gate on a yard. Okay. If you have a dog, you don't want to just let him into a yard that doesn't have a fence, right? And a gate, because if there's no fence, the dog can run out into the street and they can get hit by a car. Okay. If there's just a fence and there's no opening, the dog can never get out and it can never actually experience what's outside of that gate and learn more about the world outside of that fence. I'm sorry. But if there's a gate, you can choose when to open the gate and allow the dog to experience some of that outside world. And when it's unsafe to go back into the fence and close the gate. So, you know, we have too much freedom at our fingertips, in our pockets, you know, at all times. We're not even literally psychologically or physically advanced enough in our brain development yet to accept this much access from people 24/7 or this much information being delivered to us 24/7. It literally is like a computer program that's been overloaded and we fritz out. I mean, it's literally what we're seeing happen in culture, and because it's too much. It's too much freedom right now. So I think there's a balance, right? It's somewhere in between the European lifestyle and some of the cultural choices we've made, but we're so addicted to this culture,
right?
You know. So again, I think.
Sorry, I want to make an example here. Yes. So say Johnny's the dad of two boys. The two boys. The first one is named America, and the second boy is named China. And as these boys grow up, China has to join the military, has to go to work at an early age, has no free time to play video games, to do extracurricular activities. He is given a job, China, from day one. He has goals to hit. It's academics, work, academics, right? But America, the second son, gets all the freedoms in the world, chooses when he can go to work, gets all the screen time, plays video games all the time, has a social media page, takes a lot of selfies. And now when it comes to these boys growing up, the repercussions of America are going to come after him because he's going to not be as advanced as China. Why? Because China, the other boy in the household, has been working every day to get here, right? To accomplish his goals. So now he's got degrees, he's got this. Well, what does America have? Because he's been given all the freedoms that he neglected and procrastinated all along the way. He's not going to nearly be advanced as the second son, right? In this example, right?
Yep.
And so this is literally what America is compared to China. They have to the minimum, if you're a man, military sentence. Over here, we get to pick and choose. We get to do whatever we want to do because it's up to us. We've been given the pursuit of happiness. Over there, they've been given the pursuit of orders. You know,
hey,
and so
human beings need boundaries and consequences to thrive. If we don't have boundaries and consequences, we would not thrive. If you don't have the boundary of I touch this hot stove, the consequence is it burns my finger. You'll keep touching the hot stove and burn your flesh off, have an infection, lose your right arm, and be done if you didn't have the consequence, right? So then we set a boundary for ourselves that we can't touch the stove. It seems simple, but it's so hard for us when we're adults and we want all these freedoms and this individuality. I mean, we have like toxic individuality, toxic positivity in our societies right now, where people paint a positive image and, you know, and want to be so independent that when they get independent, they feel like they're all alone. It's like this. You know what I'm saying?
Accountability at the end of the day. I mean, like here's some pushback. As much as we say social media and, you know, the screen in front of us is a toxic thing at times, don't you think we'd be at this point where the American people should be able to take the decisions that they're making at the head of government accountable? We should be able to like put things on a vote where I click on the button and say, no, I don't like this idea. Let's not do that, versus having to wait on one person or two people to represent my state, or even one person representing my city to make those decisions at the government level. And they're not going to tell us why they decided to do that, even though that's not something that we, the people, would want.
Yeah,
so
brother.
It's very selective at this point, in my opinion.
Accountability is lost in our culture. You know, we've talked about it in a few different ways, but we don't even have the ability to hold our government accountable, in my opinion, because of the lobbying that goes on, because the lobbyists control everything and there's no term limits in Congress. So we don't have, and that's where the lobbyists go to influence most of the impactful voting in our country. It's like it's, again, we're disconnected. We don't even have the power to really influence that at this point. So we need to, God, it's a 20-legged dog. There's so much that goes into it, right?
Well, people, I want to emphasize. I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, I was going to say, we don't even have the ability to hold accountable the psychologists, the medical physicians that know all of the information I'm talking about right now, or even the government that knows these companies are selling us stuff that's actually causing us to become addicted, grow more addicted, to be less highly functioning in our, emotional and mental states, and to cause us a bunch of physical issues in the nutritional value that we're fed in our American diet, cause us a bunch of mental health issues in the way that our society lives because of the screen time and the lack of connection to one another. But we don't even have the ability to hold these people accountable.
Is it ironic? We're supposed to be the world of the free market, where ideas can come to battle and the best is what survives, and yet we don't allow that at all.
Well, no, bro.
Even when it comes to like with COVID, like last year, we had so many different opinions from doctors, from medical experts, down from doctors in local hospitals on the front lines to doctors overseeing organizations and stuff like that. They weren't even allowed to have the battle of ideas. Like, okay, you may be wrong, but at least let's hear it to make sure how does this conflict with someone else's idea, and how does it mash together, and what's the actual outcome of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, a lot of that is like, you know, these corporations bribing to get their placement on end caps, or they'll bribe major food chains, they'll bribe major distribution companies like HEB, Albertsons, which I think is owned all by Kroger or something like that. And they'll get like things in. I mean, me and you looked this up on former episodes, Micah, how many entities own entities, you know? And
it's endless.
It's
and they
endless.
go more and more to hide
Just
what
boom,
they
boom,
do
boom, boom,
own.
boom.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So why are they hiding? Why are they hiding anything that they own? Well, they don't want you to know that they're monopolizing. It's a kind of a secret monopolizing strategy that they're doing.
Yeah.
So you're like buying off-brand Kellogg's, but Kellogg's still owns those off-brands, and they're just like still making money from them, you know. And it's just like, okay, until you can, if you want to buy the cheaper stuff, we're still making the money. But shouldn't that be? You know, shouldn't that be somebody else's that can't get their product there? Shouldn't that be somebody else's cheaper cereal? But no, they're like, no, we're going to sell cheaper cereal too.
Think about Amazon. Amazon is buying up all the competition so that they have their own little platform. You got Amazon Video, you got Amazon the product, you got Amazon the hosting services they offer, and myriad more of services that buy up all these little companies. It's not so much that I think that they can make that money off of that. And so they can control where the direction of, you know, whatever they want to goes in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, man, no, I love this. I love this so far. So Micah, if you have the capability, open it up to some live comments real quick. Because I think some people want to interject with Johnny, or if any of you have questions about Johnny and his book, please ask, and we'll open it up to some live comments. I want to save the end. Johnny has a really cool story about that I think is going to be very motivational for anybody that is out there that has ever set on a goal to want to do something like Johnny has, like write a book. You know, the idea, you can always manifest it into real life. It takes the thought. Everything that's ever been manifested in this world started in the brain. And so Johnny is proof that you can follow through with goals you even think are out of reach. And he's put together such an impressive book here. So if you have any questions, I want to save to the end one of the coolest stories that he has about some affirmations in this book. But if you have any questions about this book, please hit the feed now. We'll open it up.
And since we're getting on the hour and a half mark, and I know Johnny's got that story for us towards the end, and we're waiting on some questions, is there anything else that, Johnny, you wanted to talk about your book, or any other points that you wanted to bring up? Because I've been loving where this has been going so far. We've hit on a lot of different issues, and I hope that people who've been listening and that will be listening when we release this episode fully in the next few days, that they'll take a part of that, take it to their family, like we're talking about. It starts with the family, and lead it on to the community, and hopefully we make this global change. Maybe not in this generation, but maybe 2, 3, or 4, generations from now.
Yeah, and I think one last comment I'll make too is just that we have to start recognizing the importance of family too in America. We live in a culture where we try to move as far away from our parents and as far away from our families as we can. We go to college halfway across the country or all the way across the country just to get away from them and all this stuff. Meanwhile, every other culture seems to have multi-generational family homes, just running rampant throughout their culture, because they understand the importance of that community and that environment. And so really just getting back to, healthy family environment, enlightening our families at the dinner table, and then starting, when we start there, it's going to have this huge ripple effect in our culture. And so I just hope that if there's one thing that people took from this conversation, it's that, just start focusing more on kids, start focusing more on people around you and the connections you have around you. And if you can start doing that, then the rest of it's going to start lining up, because that's where the healthy human connection breeds from. You're going to start feeling the differences and changes in your life on a daily basis, like how uncomfortable and how unhealthy connection to screens can be for you versus how healthy it feels to be around people. And of course, we're in the middle of COVID, but just do what you can at this point to spend at least an hour a day talking to another human being face to face outside of a family member, for half hour. So start there.
More, man.
Start small. It's a daunting task to change all of this and to make a cultural shift. But when you start small, you start with one decision, it snowballs into a big ass snowball at the end of the day that can just demolish anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, life's too short to not do that and recognize the importance of making changes in your own life and how it affects your family and your community. So I was having this conversation with a friend. We were kind of working some stuff out a few days ago. And I was like, man, listen, life is too short to not be honest of what you're trying to convey to me. You know, if you really value this relationship like you say you do, and the weight of the word friend or even, you know, family that you sometimes put on people, it's so heavy that it boggles my mind when people don't want to be honest and raw about how you convey your feelings and how you convey, you know, where you're wanting to be in this life. And like we've talked about earlier in this episode, you know, being the ability to be inconvenient and be maybe outside of your skin that you're comfortable with, and being able to talk about stuff like that, I think is so important in this day and this generation.
Yeah, people see. So go, yeah, 100%. You know, people think that fire, you know, walking into a fire or conflict, you know, we'll call a conflict fire, walking into something that's uncomfortable, being the fire, they think that it's going to burn them. You know, the thing that is, it's going to refine you. You might get burned. It's going to hurt a little bit. It's going to be a little hot. It's going to be uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, once you walk out the other side of that fire, you're refined and you can actually understand more. You can get through more. You can actually pass on more. And I think that's just the circle of life. It's what we're supposed to do, you know. You meet people that have had no conflicts in their life, and they're some of the most hyper reactive people ever, because they don't know how to handle somebody that doesn't agree with them or something that makes them a little uncomfortable. So, you know, I'm all for conversations like this. You know, let's make people uncomfortable and let's start growing again.
Yeah. Yep. And dude, some of these live comments that are coming through are pretty on point. Like Tim's got this one right here. Human interaction isn't a privilege. It's a necessary tool to keep the world as a whole, unless the less of this generates the issue we have today with sensitivity and senseless behavior. Also, Vasha before that said that, you know, conflict breeds change. I couldn't agree more, because what was it? Frederick Douglass back in the day said, without struggle, there is no progress.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and this is a huge thing with everything, anything that's ever changed, anything that ever had to go in motion at some point, just like we were bringing up earlier with the social justice acts in wars back in the day in the 60s when interracial couples were illegal. At some point that had to be pushed into motion and had to make people uncomfortable in order to get that ignorancy turned around, you know?
Yeah. Slavery was abolished, but yet we still had black and white fountains in the 60s.
Right. Some of the, you know, and obviously not in our lifetime, but we watch these movies and we go, that shit was real. Like,
yeah, man,
you know, that was in our parents' lifetime. It's crazy, right? You know, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. But the more we connect with one another, the more we understand the differences between us and how important they are. I mean, you guys are going to have skills that I don't have, that I'm going to need to have, you know, enacted at some point in my life. And if you're not there to do it, I need to have somebody else that has that skill to do it, because I might not have that skill. I might have the skill that complements that skill, but I don't have that skill, you know, and that person might not have the skill I need. So, you know, I might have the truck to pull the guy out, but I might not have the tow winch. And along comes a guy with a tow winch, but he didn't have the power on his truck. So he takes a tow winch off his truck and I put it on my truck and we get the guy out. You know,
good example, man.
It's a simple analogy, but that's human. That's just life, you know, but yet we put people down because they don't have a tow winch and because I have a bigger truck and we want to bitch about which one's better. You know, and
that's exactly
that's the real Texas thing down here.
Meanwhile, meanwhile, the guy's drowning and dying in the lake, you know, and somebody else is videotaping it while it's all happening.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So real, you know? So real, man.
Yeah. I mean, dude, that's so spot on. But dude, before we wrap this up, man, I got one last question for you. What would you say? And after you answer this, please share what happened on that Uber ride that one day. But what would you say to people trying to carry through with a goal, much like yours with this book when you first started it and manifested it inside your head? What would you say to people to follow through with the goals that they even think are unreachable?
Man, honestly, I think accountability's been, you know, the word of the hour and 45 minutes almost.
Yeah.
You got to find accountability. You got to find people that are going to hold you accountable, because something like this, a message like this, a conversation like this is something that's going to piss a lot of people off. It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And you're going to have a lot of people that are uncomfortable and pissed off telling you you're crazy. So you have to have some people that are accountable or going to hold you accountable to keep going, to keep moving. So surround yourself with a good support system that are actually going to hold you accountable. And that kind of, leads me into that interaction, that experience in the Uber car. I was driving for Uber and Lyft, I said, while I was writing, the first portion of this book. And, it was like, okay, so I write a book. Like, I don't have a PhD, I don't have my counseling license or degree. I'm not a doctor. I'm bringing in medical, spiritual, physical, emotional, psychological. I'm bringing in sociological, all these areas, right, to say we need to be more connected. So it's easy to let that really just stop you dead in your tracks. And it did for a while. But with people that will hold you accountable and continue to hear what you have to say and push you forward, while the rest of the people that it's uncomfortable to hear your message are telling you shouldn't do it, because it literally contradicts their lifestyle. So I'm going to say a lot of stuff that's going to make people mad, because they're doing exactly what I'm saying is unhealthy. But when they do the research, they'll find that's the truth. So I'm just trying to feed them information that's good for them. I'm the friend that said, get off your ass and get a job, and that's who I'm being right now. And I'm choosing to be that, but I have to have that support group and that accountability group around me to say, no, buddy, you need to get off your ass and continue writing this book. You need to finalize this book. You need to continue doing podcasts and talking about this book. You need to continue sharing this message, because it is that important. Don't let, oh my gosh, you're not done with the book yet, and you had a deadline of, January 2021. Oh my gosh, you don't have a bunch of followers yet. Don't let that get in the way. It's important enough. So just surround yourself with a good support system, connect with those people, and let them kick you in the ass every now and then with accountability.
Man, I think that was a great answer, dude. If you guys got anything, I see a bunch of comments coming in, Mike, if you want to bring that up in closing, man. But I want to thank you for coming on, Johnny. It was a pleasure, man. So Tim Smith says you have to hold yourself accountable before you can hold anyone else accountable, and so on. Any thoughts on that?
That's so true.
Yeah.
No, I think it's true, 100% true. And I am a big advocate for, holding myself accountable. So I think that's why it's an easy topic to talk about. And when people talk about accountability and they get offended, it's because they don't even hold themselves accountable. I think the people that hold other people accountable, because it's comfortable for them to hold themselves accountable, they wouldn't be, asking something from somebody that they wouldn't do themselves. And so they feel free and vulnerable enough to do that. But so anyways, the Uber story real quick. So I was driving Uber and Lyft, and I gave this guy a ride. He gets in the car. We have like a 30-minute ride from downtown to like Highlands Ranch Centennial area. And he goes, give me 5 minutes. I got to figure something out. Sorry about that. He gets on like 8 different phone calls in 5 minutes. He speaks like 3 different languages. He's going in and out. I'm like, dude, this guy's like a mastermind. Oh my God. I could just sit here and listen to him work all day long. So he gets done. He's like, sorry about that. I had to like figure out how to get my friend from Europe to America. They weren't letting her through customs. So we just changed the flight to Canada, and we're going to go skiing in Canada instead of Aspen. And I was like, Jesus, who is this guy? I was like, well, dude, like I was just impressed by your high processing and functionality, like how you got through all that. You were speaking 3 different languages, like 8 different phone calls in 5 minutes, got it all taken care of. I'm like, I wish I could be around a brain like yours. I'd learn a lot. And he goes, well, thanks. I appreciate that. And clearly you seem to have a grasp on what high intelligence looks like. So what do you do outside of driving? You have to do something. I was like, well, I'm actually writing a book, my first book. And he goes, oh, really? So what's it on? So I tell him, and I spend 15, 20 minutes talking about my book, just spilling my guts. I was like, man, I've been talking for too long. You didn't say a thing. He goes, no, I'm really intrigued. And he goes, to be completely honest, you're spot on. You need to write your book. He goes, but I'll tell you what, you're a public speaker and you really need to get in contact with a public speaking bureau. He goes, do you have a business card? I said, yeah. He goes, write your home address down on there. I'm going to send you something. So I say, okay, cool. Write my home address down, give him my business card, the human experience business card. And I said, can I get your business card? He goes, no, I said I was going to send you something. I was like, all right. So I get out and, get his luggage out of the trunk. And he's like, hey, I just wanted to give this to you. And he gives me $100 bill, cash tip. He goes, it's not going to change your life, but it's probably going to change your day. I know you're struggling right now. We were struggling to pay bills and, get Christmas presents under the tree and stuff. And it just broke me, man. I started crying and I gave him a hug and said, thanks so much. And he goes, seriously, find a public speaking bureau. So I got in the car, I called my wife, and I'm like freaking out driving home. It was such a cool experience that, this guy's going to send me something. Well, a week goes by and I'm coming home from my son's soccer game, and Saturday I see this big package sticking out of the mailbox. This big, like, soft brown bag looking package. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I pull it out, and it said, it had two initials. It said like PC or something. I was thinking it was like Paul, like Color or something was his name on the app. So it had the PC, like the first name and last name initial from the Uber ride app on it. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that I gave a ride to. Like, okay, so this is him. I'm babe, he sent me something. So I opened the package and it's the book, The Da Vinci Code. And I was like, dude, I love this book. This guy totally knows me. This is up my alley, like this style of writing. That's cool that he would send me this book. I was like, but I already have a copy of it. So, I mean, whatever, it's a cool gift. So I opened the book and I went, holy shit. It was Dan Brown, the author of the Da Vinci Code.
Whoa.
That was in my car and heard the whole book theory and thought and said that I need to actually finish this.
That is incredible.
And then sent me this postcard too.
That's awesome, man.
Dude,
that's insane.
It's amazing. People so need to hear that.
So that to be said that sometimes, the kick in the ass, the accountability and the inspiration is going to come from a totally random stranger and different direction than you ever thought. But again, you have to be connected to what's in front of you in order to receive that shit. If I wouldn't have been connected to what that guy was doing and him being in my car and that conversation, I never would have got to have Dan Brown, the author of the Da Vinci Code, one of what I feel is one of the greatest writers of the last 20, 30 years, in my car and tell me that I need to write my book and I need to continue this message. So not to toot my own horn, but for me, it was a divine delivery, and it was just another connection that showed I need to finish this book. So first copy will go to Dan Brown, and I'll send you guys a second copy.
Dude, I think people just need to hear that, man. But I think that was something that you least expected. Like, sometimes the extra kick in the butt comes when you least expect it, but sometimes the kick in the butt doesn't always have to be a forceful one. It can be the one that is the funnest. It could also be the one with the most incentive, like Dan Brown writing that to you, sending that to you, and you didn't even realize at the time it was him.
Yeah, I was freaking out. I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Well, and when you think about it, I thought back on that moment. I'm like, why wouldn't he have just told me who he was? Well, that would have taken away all of my moment that he was letting me have and he was experiencing with me. He was connected to me and my passion and my movement and my voice and my book and what I want to do in the world.
The human connection.
He allowed himself to connect and feel it as this huge, image in the world. He allowed himself to get in the back of my car and stay there instead of get too big for himself to connect. And he let me have that. He didn't want to steal that from me.
That's incredible.
And he knew that he would give me a better impact by me picking that book out of the mail the next week, realizing it was him in the back of my car. It was just
shout out to Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, and for some odd reason, Tom Hanks. He just got to be in there somewhere.
Right? We were just watching the movie a couple weeks ago too. It's crazy.
Yeah, I did.
Isn't that crazy, man?
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I'm so glad to hear that, dude. It's been a pleasure. I am so stoked about your book, man. So before we go and we wrap up, Johnny, please tell them where they can find you, where anybody watching this video can follow you for updates and anything else that you post.
Absolutely. So, I'm just getting going. Being that I'm obviously not the biggest advocate for screen time.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's a little hard to get myself out there in the social media world, but I do have an Instagram site. It's called The Human XPRNC. I have a YouTube channel that I'm going to start posting hopefully some more podcaster talks like this, discussions like this with people, or just, idea flows. I'm putting those out, updating people on the process of the book and when it's going to be coming out. So you can find me on YouTube at the Human XPRNC. Instagram is at the Human XPRNC. Facebook, there is the Human XPRNC page as well. And then I did just start a Patreon. If anybody really was inspired or wants to just invest and be part of this journey with me, I'll have a Patreon set up that's linked to all those pages, and you guys can go on there. I'll start setting up some packages and some like donation goodies that will be rewards for if you guys invest in the process and of getting this book published and finished and packaged up and out there to the world.
Heck yeah. And we want to thank you guys, everybody that tuned into the live feed tonight. Thank you for bearing through the beginning of the technical difficulties, but all of Johnny's links, if you do want to support him or you do want to follow him, will be posted in the YouTube description or any of the social medias once we get done with the audio.
I'll make sure that we get that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Micah, you got anything to say in closing, brother?
Johnny, this has been an awesome. I want to thank you for being our first guest and our guinea pig for the Guilty Party.
Heck yeah,
I appreciate you letting us kind of poke some holes, get some pushback, and ask some really good questions that I think that a lot of people just kind of want to know and have probably been feeling in their gut for the longest time. I really like that the emphasis right now is it starts with us and our human connection with everyone else. It starts with the family, and hopefully it trickles down to our community, and that we can make a change, even if it was only in our community. I think that's a huge win versus doing nothing at all. Sometimes getting a kick in the ass. I know people don't like it, being uncomfortable and being called on stuff. Sometimes that's what we need. I mean, and that's what you're supposed to do with your friends and with your community. I mean, that's what Pat and I. There's been plenty of times we're both like, hey man, let's take a step back and really look at this with some fresh eyes. Or I've got friends that I try to hold myself accountable, and I hold them as well, just so we can make sure we're growing in a healthy and a positive manner, and we're maintaining that human connection, because I think that is so vital right now in a world where we're still locked down and we're still pushed down, even though we've craved that human connection because we want that change. And I think with that connection, you feel emotion. You're more willing to open yourself up and just be vulnerable to, people out there.
100%. And if I can leave everybody with one last wrap up of everything, it's, again, don't start too big, one step at a time, make one good choice, maybe for the week, and then make it your monthly choice. And then after a quarter of that being the choice that you're stuck to, maybe add in another one. But, you're going to screw up. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. And you're going to relapse on some things and fall back and completely sway the pendulum the other direction. I know, because I'm doing it as I'm writing the book. I've had my moments. I've had my talks with my kids. I've had my accountability from my wife by being on a TV too much when I'm writing a book. And I mean, it's a never ending journey. But the quote that just came to mind as we were talking, and I wrote it down, is, the freedom to make mistakes is the catalyst to grow. And so we have to give ourselves the freedom to go into this and make some pretty tough decisions and change some pretty ingrained actions, and know that we're going to make mistakes in that process, but that's truly going to be the catalyst to all of our growth.
Couldn't agree more, man. Well, let's wrap it there, because I don't think there's anything better. That was awesome, man. Well,
Thanks,
love you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Guilty Party episode, I want to say 5. I always forget, but it's a wrap, baby. Our first ever guest for now until the end of time, Jonathan Lee, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor, guys. Thanks so much.
Make sure you guys subscribe on our YouTube channel and all our streaming platforms. And as always, if you're listening, you are one of us. Thank you so much. This is the Guilty Party signing out.
Bye.